Good morning, everybody. My name is Kenny Foscue, and I'm a member of the USNH Connect core team and a member of the Connect strategy team, which is basically our board of directors. Connect, as a reminder, is the Congregations for a New Connecticut, a powerful faith-based social justice organization made up of 36 diverse congregations, including us. One of Connect's 3 issue priorities this year is increasing funding for education in our state, especially for under-resourced urban school districts. A couple of very disturbing facts. A Black student in Mississippi has a better chance of receiving a quality education than a Black student in Connecticut. Connecticut spends $788 million more educating white students than students of color. I find this totally unacceptable. HB 5003, an act concerning education funding in Connecticut, was passed by the Education Committee of the legislature unanimously and recently the Appropriations Committee passed its budget proposal. But the bill is very much underfunded for what's needed. It only included an increase of $150 million when the need is over $300 million to invest in our children. So we need to generate calls and postcards to our state senators and representatives to urge them to fully and fairly fund education in Connecticut by fully funding HB 5003 in the state budget. So there's 2 actions you can take. Today, we will be having postcard signing to legislators in the social hall right after this service. Come and write cards to your state representative and senator. Also, next Thursday, come to Wrap the Capitol action. We're going to surround the Capitol. No violence, don't worry. In Hartford on Thursday, as I mentioned, May 4th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and join with other faith and other organizations to push for full and fair education funding. May 4th happens to be National Day of Prayer. We will have a sign-up list for carpooling at today's table. And thank you, everybody, for advocating for full and fair education funding in this supposedly very liberal state. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lily. Thank you. My name is Lily Forbush, and my pronouns are she and hers. And I invite you to rise in body, in spirit, in all the ways that we do, and join me in singing hymn number 71 in the gray hymnal, "In the Spring with the Plow and Harrow."
Good morning. My name is Gregory Feely. I will be your worship associate at today's service. It is my pleasure to welcome one and all to this service of the Unitarian Society of New Haven. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whether you call this place home for years or visiting for the first time, whether you breathe oxygen or some mix of methane gases from Jupiter, you are welcome here. Tomorrow is International Workers' Day, celebrated in most countries of the world, though not the United States. We celebrate Labor Day, a more sedate observance, at the beginning of September, a time when USNH devotes its Sunday services to our water ceremony and ingathering. For that reason, we thought to dedicate the service to thinking about labor, those who carry it out, and the conditions under which they carry out their labors. I have a couple of announcements this morning. There are two events happening after this morning's service. The Budget Planning Task Force will hold a meeting right here in the sanctuary at noon to hear about our findings and discuss your great ideas stemming from the listening sessions in the fall, and to learn about an exciting new initiative on behalf of our community. I don't know what that is either, so. Also, there will be an adult religious education discussion circle in the USNH library upstairs starting at noon. You'll have to pick between them. The conversation will use the monthly worship theme of resistance as its starting point. One more, just hot off the press. Spring into action for USNH Grounds Manicure. Join the doers. Come one, come all to our annual spring cleanup on Saturday, May 6th from 9 a.m. to noon. Stay for an hour, stay for 3. Fun tasks include raking leaves, pulling weeds, not my favorite, gathering branches, and mulching will be on the agenda. No experience required, direction and training provided. If possible, bring your own tools, mark them with your own name, and bring gloves too. If you have any questions, contact Shirley Dionne's cell at 203-710-9178. If you didn't get that, you can come up and ask me after the service. And now, please silence your electronic devices, put them away, and settle in for this morning's worship.
Our call to worship and chalice lighting this morning are the words of the Reverend Suzelle Lynch, titled, "Awaken to the Work." The fire of love burning deep in every human heart calls us to awaken. Awaken to the work of justice. Awaken to the work of compassion. Awaken to the work of community. For in this time of human suffering and exaltation, we are called beyond awakening into action. May the chalice flame we now light guide our hearts in service to a greater good that holds all living things in its holy embrace.
One of the ideas in religion I've always been fascinated by is the idea of pilgrimage. The idea of people going to a place of great significance, whether it's historical, spiritual. I went on a pilgrimage, one of my first pilgrimages, in the name of Unitarian Universalism, without knowing that I was on a pilgrimage. It was some years ago. I went to a banana farm, banana production facility near the coast in Ecuador. And I didn't realize that I was on a pilgrimage, largely because I just went there to learn about the production of bananas. But I met this guy there named Andres, and he explained several things to me about the production of bananas. At the time that I visited, a law had just been passed in Ecuador that prohibited the spraying of pesticides on bananas while the workers were in the fields. Andres told me that his own father and several hundred workers that he knew had died in their 60s, largely due to diseases they had gotten while being sprayed directly by pesticides on the bananas. He said that the change in the law was largely due to protests in the United States, in Europe, and in other countries. That was one of the first times I saw the other side of the protests that I had been engaged in the United States and the effect that they might have. When I accompanied Andres out into the fields, we saw that the bananas were planted near the ocean, right along a river. And all the banana trees were on these little hills made out of dirt with these valleys in between them. I said, why are they built up onto these hills with the valleys in between them? He said, the water that runs off after they've sprayed the pesticides on these bananas is so pungent that it can't stay in the soil. It has to run off. I said, well, where does it go? Well, it goes right into the river and then out into the ocean. So Andres was a teacher for me, and I realized that it was a pilgrimage for two reasons. First and foremost, I began to think afterwards about what the interdependent web of existence really means in the context of the bananas I buy at the supermarket. I'm not just connected to all other living beings. I'm connected to their labor. I am connected to their suffering. I am connected to the decisions, through the decisions that I make when I choose which bananas I buy at the supermarket, I am connected to their well-being, their very survival. So it was a pilgrimage in the name of the interdependent web of existence. Let us each take the time that's necessary to think about the connection that we have to all living beings when we're at the supermarket making decisions about which fruit we're going to buy, or other decisions about, how we're going to live our lives, how we are going to purchase, or what we're going to purchase and what we're going to support. So, with that in our minds, I'm going to take these organic bananas up for snack for the first and second graders if they want it. And we are going to sing the children out to their classes with Our Roots Go Down by Sarah Purtle. Children and youth, come with me and let's sing them out together. Our roots go down, down to the earth. Our roots go down, down to the earth. Our roots go down, down to the earth. Our roots go down. Our roots go down, down to the earth. Our roots go down, down to the earth. Our roots go down, down to the earth. Our roots go down.
Good morning. My name is Jeanette Faber. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am your .5 worship associate today. Jesse always comes to the rescue. He really is a superhero. Next time I'm going to have matches. Today's joys and sorrows. USNH member Joyce Sullivan fell a couple of days ago and has been in the hospital. She hurt her hip and will be receiving care at Whitney Rehabilitation Center, formerly Whitney Manor. Cards and good wishes are welcome. We are sad to announce the passing of Abe Katz, who died peacefully on April 20th with his wife Marion and their son by his side. Cards and good wishes are welcome.
Why should I let the toad work, squat on my life? Can't I use my wit as a pitchfork and drive the brute off? 6 days of the week it soils with its sickening poison. just for paying a few bills. That's out of proportion.
Every week, we lift up the spiritual value of generosity by taking an offering for the ministries of this congregation. Those here in person can make donations on their way out of the sanctuary at the end of the service, or there is a QR code on the order of service to make a donation. For those watching online while the music plays, I urge you to consider navigating to the usnh.org website and making a donation. That's usnh.org website. Donations can also be sent by U.S. mail to the Unitarian Society of New Haven, 700 Hartford Turnpike, Hamden, Connecticut, 06517. The offering will now be gratefully received.
The work, it ain't nothing but an awful boring job. Waiting on a daydream to take me through the morning, put me in my coffee break where I can have a sandwich and remember. Then it's me and my machine for the rest of the morning, for the rest of the afternoon, and the rest of my life. Now my mind begins to wander to the days back on the farm. See my father smiling at me, swinging on his arm. I hear my granddad's stories of the storms out on Lake Erie, of vessels and cargoes and fortunes, sailors' lives were lost. Yes, but it's my life has been wasted, and it's I've been the fool to let this manufacturer use my body for a tool. Ride home every evening, staring at my hands, swearing to my soul that a young girl ought to stand a better chance. So may I work your mills just as long as I am able. Never meet the man whose name is on the label. It's still me and my machine for the rest of the morning, for the rest of the afternoon gone, and the rest of my life.
Alabanza, in praise of Local 100, by Martín Espada. For the 43 members of hotel employees and restaurant employees, Local 100, working at the Windows on the World restaurant who lost their lives in the attack on the World Trade Center. Alabanza, praise the cook with a shaven head and a tattoo on his shoulder that said, Oye, a blue-eyed Puerto Rican with people from Fajardo, the harbor of pirates centuries ago. Praise the lighthouse in Fajardo, candle glimmering, white to worship of the dark saint of the sea. Alabanza. Praise the cook's yellow pirate's cap, worn in the name of Roberto Clemente, his plane that flamed into the ocean, loaded with cans for Nicaragua. For all the mouths chewing the ash of earthquakes, alabanza. Praise the kitchen radio, dial clicked even before the dial on the oven, so that music and Spanish rose before bread. Praise the bread, alabanza. Praise Manhattan, from 107 flights up, like Atlantis glimpsed through the windows of an ancient aquarium. Praise the great windows where immigrants from the kitchen could squint and almost see their world, hear the chant of nations, Ecuador, Mexico, República Dominicana, Haití, Yemen, Ghana, Bangladesh, alabanza. Praise the kitchen in the morning where the gas burned blue on every stove and exhaust fans fired their diminutive propellers. Hands cracked eggs with quick thumbs or sliced open cartons to build an altar of cans. Alabanza. Praise the busboy's music, the chime of his dishes and silverware in the tub. Alabanza. Praise the dish dog, the dishwasher, who worked that morning because another dishwasher could not stop coughing, or because he needed overtime to pile the sacks of rice and beans for a family floating away on some Caribbean island plagued by frogs. Alabanza. Praise the waitress who heard the radio in the kitchen and sang to herself about a man gone. Alabanza. After the thunder, wilder than thunder, after the shudder deep in the glass of the great windows, after the radio stopped singing like a tree full of terrified frogs, after night burst the dam of day and flooded the kitchen, for a time the stoves glowed in darkness, like the lighthouse in Fajardo, like a cook's soul, I should say, even if the dead cannot tell us about the bristles of God's beard, because God has no face. Soul, I say, to name the smoke beings flung in constellations across the night sky of this city and cities to come. Alabanza, I say, even if God has no face. Alabanza. When the war began, from Manhattan and Kabul, two constellations of smoke rose and drifted to each other, mingling in the icy air. And one said with an Afghan tongue, "Teach me to dance. We have no music here." And the other said with a Spanish tongue, "I will teach you. Music is all we have."
Away with all your super speed.
All right. Work. No one knows when work, meaning labor that we don't wish to do but must, began. Humans evolved as hunter-gatherers, and anyone who has watched a fox, a rabbit, or even a dog on a leash going along its daily rounds can see that they don't hate the necessity of sniffing for food, chasing prey, or grabbing up bits they find under bushes. It's what they do. And it is likely that the early humans did not feel oppressed by either the necessity of hunting or of gathering. Perhaps when humans left the African savanna and had to stitch clothing from hides and make tools to catch prey they could no longer simply run down, these tasks became onerous. Certainly, the advent of agriculture, which historians associate with the creation of strongly hierarchical social organizations, resulted in the necessity of efforts that can fairly be called toil. The earliest surviving writings speak of work as something painful, which must be done simply in order to live. Hesiod, one of the earliest Greek poets, enjoined his readers to work the work which the gods ordained for men, lest in bitter anguish you and your family must seek alms from your neighbors, who will ignore you. The earliest existing Buddhist writings vividly evoke the suffering that humanity experiences in trying to stay alive, while the Old Testament is full of references to the misery of work, with laboring men likened to donkeys and to slaves. In the book of John, Jesus tells his followers that others have labored and you have entered into their labor. When most of the world's work was agricultural, its rhythms were tied to those of the seasons, back-breaking labor between planting and harvest times, with the winter months given over to repairing one's tools and such leisure as one could afford. Industrialization, especially after the introduction of artificial lighting, freed factory owners from having to limit work hours to daylight, created the social conditions that prevailed before the labor movements gained strength. 70-hour work weeks, production lines where goods would be manufactured not by a single craftsman or artisan, but by large numbers of workers, each carrying out a single monotonous step over and over all day. And, of course, the necessity of carrying out dangerous or degrading tasks. Unitarians, when they speak of work, tend to emphasize its rewarding aspects, the fulfillment one can get from doing the work one loves. And indeed, even the onerous and unlovable tasks, undertaken only for money, can bring a sense of accomplishment when done well. We see this in Philip Levine's poem, Fear and Fame. Half an hour to dress, wide rubber hip boots, gauntlets to the elbow, a plastic helmet like a knight's, but with a little glass window that kept steaming over, and a respirator to save my smoke-stained lungs. I would descend step by slow step into the dim world of the pickling tank, and there prepare the new solutions from the great carboys of acids lowered to me on ropes. All from a recipe I shared with nobody and learned from Frank O'Mara before he went off to the bars on Werner Highway to drink himself to death. A gallon of hydrochloric steaming from the wide glass mouth, a dash of pale nitric to bubble up, sulfuric to calm, metals for sweeteners, cleansers for salts, until I knew the burning stew was done. Then to climb back, step by stately step, the adventurer returned to the ordinary blinking lights of the swing shift at Feinberg and Breslin's first-rate plumbing and plating, with a message from the kingdom of fire. Oddly enough, no one welcomed me back, and I'd stand fully armored as a downpour of cold water rained down on me, and the smoking traces puddled at my feet like so much milk in melting snow. Then to disrobe down to my work pants and shirt, my black street shoes and white cotton socks, to reassume my nickname, strap on my bolova, screw back my wedding ring, and with tap water gargle away the bitterness as best I could. For 15 minutes or more, I'd sit quietly off to the side of the world as the women polished the tubes and fixtures to a burnished purity, hung like Christmas ornaments on the racks pulled steadily towards the tanks I'd cooked. Ahead lay the second cigarette, held in a shaking hand, as I took into myself the sickening heat to quell heat. A lunch of 2 Genoa salami sandwiches and Swiss cheese on heavy peasant bread baked by my Aunt Sippy, and a third cigarette to kill the taste of the others. Then to arise and dress again in the costume of my trade for the second time that night, stiffened by the knowledge that to descend and rise up from the other world merely once in 8 hours is half what it takes to be known among women and men. Levine is writing of the 1950s, an era when industrial jobs in Detroit, where he lived, commanded a degree of respect among one's peers. But in her 1983 poem, Half-Breed, Cherry Moraga suggests that unpleasant, solitary work, which is now non-union and ill-paid, leads to profound self-alienation. The difference between you and me is, as I bent over strangers' toilet bowls, the face that glared back at me in those sedentary waters was not my own, but my mother's brown head floating in a pool of crystalline whiteness. She taught me how to clean, to get down on my hands and knees and scrub, not beg. She taught me how to clean, not live in this body. My reflection has always been once removed. Nobody loves cleaning toilets, certainly not other people's, and other jobs, including work in the agricultural sector and in our country's horrific factory farm systems, are wearisome and ill-paid and also dangerous. The meat processing plants that represent the final stage of the factory farm systems are so horrible that most non-vegetarians simply decide not to think about them. Today, the very idea that workers possessed an inherent dignity and right to respect is being challenged on numerous fronts. A few years ago, then House Majority Leader Eric Cantor of Virginia observed Labor Day by tweeting, "Today, we celebrate those who have taken a risk, worked hard, built a business, and earned their own success." That is, Labor Day, the day to commemorate labor and those who do it, is erased, replaced by Small Business Owners Day. A year later, Governor Brownback of Kansas, during a bill signing ceremony, they were cutting taxes, said this, "We're on a path of growth and job creation, so I say, come to Kansas. We're paving the way to make Kansas the best place in America to raise a family and run a business." He did not, that is, express a desire that Kansas become the best place in America to raise a family and work for a business. It is, as with Eric Cantor, the business owners with whom the elected official identifies. Sarah Jaffe's recent book, Work Won't Love You Back, How Devotion to Our Jobs Keep Us Exploited, Exhausted, and Alone, offers a harrowing portrait of how dedication to our careers, to the work we love, can be used against us. Skilled and more or less decently paid jobs, such as tech jobs in programming and elsewhere, work the young employees mercilessly and strive to erase the distinction between the workplace and one's actual personal life, while lower paying jobs in nonprofits, in the school systems, in the arts, ask employees to dedicate their waking lives to the cause and urges employees to lean in. You lean in, of course, in order to put your back to the wheel. Jaffe also explains how interns are induced to work insane hours, usually for nominal salaries and sometimes for nothing at all, in the hopes of later being hired for a real job. As bad as this all sounds, it's worth noting that, aside from one chapter devoted to working retail, Jaffe's scope is restricted to those jobs to which one can feel devotion. That is, jobs that can be described as a vocation, or which can lead to a career. Nobody cleans public restrooms because they love the work or because it will in time lead to better things. The kitchen workers in Martin Espada's Alabanza are not on a career path that will allow them someday to be chefs or open their own restaurant or even hope to advance to the level of their immediate supervisors. Because they have a union, as of course most restaurant workers do not, they are fully employed and not part of the gig economy, terrifyingly described in Louis Hyman's recent book, Temp, that makes every worker pay for his own benefits and allows them to be fired, or simply, rather, not rehired, when the task for which they were hired ends. And elsewhere in the private sector, things are getting worse. In Arkansas last month, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders signed a bill loosening her state's barriers to child labor, allowing teens as young as 14 to work without obtaining special permits. Legislators in Iowa just passed a bill that would let teens participate in, quote, work-based learning programs, unquote, that let them work hazardous jobs, such as in meatpacking factories and mines, as well as night shifts. And in another development from the past week, the New York Times reports that thousands of migrant children, Spanish-speaking children sent alone into the United States, who ended up under the jurisdiction of federal agencies, were turned over to sponsors who use them for child labor in dangerous jobs. By which I mean, children as young as 13 were found cleaning dangerous equipment in overnight shifts in meatpacking plants. Some were found to have suffered chemical burns. So, what should we do about this? Given our commitment to restricting ourselves to peaceful action, perhaps there is nothing effective to be done. It is not for me to tell you what you should do, at least not while standing here. Until we live in an era where toilets can be cleaned and grease traps emptied by machines, someone will have to do these jobs. And the economic mechanisms that decree that such workers be badly paid also exerts a steady pressure to reduce safety regulations protecting such workers and to force more vulnerable persons into these tasks. The Unitarian Universalist Association comprises congregations that are largely educated, whose members tend to work in offices or schools. Those who do work in shops do not likely work in sweatshops. We worry about the exodus of IT jobs to India, or the reduction of full-time professional jobs to consultant or adjunct status, or incursions of ChatGPT into domains that are reserved for managerial ranks. And I'm not here to say that we shouldn't. But it is the ranks of those farther down the economic ladder who are hurt first and hurt most. Those for whom work is not a vocation, not a stepping stone to better jobs, but simply toil, will not see their lot materially improved anytime soon. And we do well, at the very least, to look hard at those looming factors that threaten to make it worse.
We'll now sing in the Grey Hymnal, We'll Build a Land. 121.
While Jeanette extinguishes our chalice, please join me in the words we use to extinguish the chalice, which you'll find printed in your order of service or in the chat on the live stream. Together, let us say, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And the words of our benediction are from a poem by Adrienne Rich called The Tourist and the Town. To work and suffer is to come to know the angles of a room, light in a square, as convalescents learn the face of one who has watched beside them. Go in peace.